Just how was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs created? And how are the famous Disney short films made? To give you the answer, we take you behind the closed doors of the famed Walt Disney Studio in Hollywood. Doors usually barred to all visitors. During the past 3 years, the studio staff has grown from less than 300 to more than 700 artists and musicians. They worked in shifts, night and day, to complete this unique experiment in entertainment. Remember as a kid how you made your own movies by drawing little figures on the pages of a pad and flipping the pages to make the figures move? That's the basic principle behind animated pictures today. But that's not all there is to it. First, you need a story. Thinking up funny stories is the job of Walt Disney's writers, gag men, and sketch artists. After much trial and error, several hundred rough drawings illustrating the high points of each story are completed. Let's follow the story into conference, where Walt Disney and his hard-boiled directors look it over. Not a picture, long or short, goes into production without Walt's personal okay. Next, a director whips the script and dialogue into final form. Then he calls in his assistants, including his musical composer, and plans the score of the picture, timing out each scene carefully. He even acts out every move of the action so that the men who work with him can visualize what the scene will look like on the screen. Now he sets his expert animators to work, the skilled artists who draw every movement in complete detail, just as you will see it in the theater. Each animator's drawing board is lighted from below. He looks through the paper at the character he has previously outlined and draws the next movement in correct position. This clever animator is using a mirror to capture a tricky facial expression like this. Let's move along to the test camera department. Here the animator's rough drawings are photographed in sequence, one at a time. This film is developed and returned to the animator, who checks to see how good it is by running it in a small projection machine called a moviola. In this moviola, as the animator runs his film backward and forward, we catch a graceful glimpse of the screen's newest heroine, Snow White herself. Now we're in one of the studio projection rooms, where Walt and his staff study the rough animation of a sequence about the 7 lovable little dwarfs. Once they are okayed, the thousands of pencil drawings go to the inking department. Here, hundreds of pretty girls, in a comfortable building all their own, well-lighted, air-conditioned throughout, cover the drawings with sheets of transparent celluloids. Then they painstakingly trace every line of every drawing in ink, following exactly in every detail the original animation drawings. Now the picture moves into its final stage, color. In the studio paint laboratory, all colors used are made up from secret formulas. Expert chemists develop more than 1,500 different shades of color for Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. The inked celluloids next go to the painting department, where more pretty girls apply the final colors on the back. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs required 250,000 celluloids painted like this one. In another department of the big Disney studio, artists delicately paint the beautiful stage settings for the picture. These backgrounds are done in watercolor. Artists work for months on backgrounds like the interior of the 7 Dwarfs cottage. But the colossal task isn't finished even yet. The celluloids and backgrounds must still be photographed by the master camera in Technicolor. Here the operator puts a Donald Duck celluloid on top of a background as the overhead camera exposes one frame of film. To photograph Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, this operation had to be repeated more than 500,000 times. Next, the film passes into the hands of technicians, and the sound effects are recorded. Finally, a symphony orchestra records the musical score, the hit tunes that will thrill listeners the world over. Now comes a crucial moment, the picture's world premiere in Hollywood. Crowds flock to see an animation exhibit set up outside the theater.
今いやこの瞬間 瞬間。
Miyazaki's approach to filmmaking is completely unorthodox. Oftentimes, he will begin animation and production before his script is all finished. Additionally, he tends to stray from the original storyboard as he delves deeper into his films. Miyazaki informs us that his creative process is, quote, thinking about my stories for a long time. If you have a better way, please let me know. He often draws from his own experiences and subconscious mind, specifically relating to his Japanese culture and traditions. At the same time, he tells us to start from what we don't understand and explore that topic to the fullest extent. Miyazaki focuses on the adventures of children because, as he states, we get strength and encouragement from watching children, and they bring out that purity of heart. However,
so now Elsa stands on the shoreline of the Dark Sea, and we start with crash, this lightning, and we go back and we see this figure, who's Elsa, looking out over the sea. There are these roaring, turbulent waves. She gives a little look. She's going to do a little like, I got this sort of nod. And she forms this little ice ramp that she slides down, and she runs again on the waves. This time she's getting close to making it, but a huge wave is forming, and she shoots with her ice, forming this giant like iceberg type thing that she was going to run up, but it doesn't work, and it comes crashing down onto her, and she plunges down into the ocean, and the camera goes now underwater as we see the roller goes by, and in between here she'll start swimming, and it's really, really dark, and the lightning will flash, and that will light up Elsa, and then at the very end, as she's swimming, we see a lightning flash which reveals the Knock horse for the first time.
Very dramatic.
Elsa, her back, and she's facing these huge tumultuous waves, and the lightning's flashing off in the distance, and we just see something, but we don't know exactly what it is. It's a hard cut to Elsa, and she's standing there now. She's drenched. She's right back where she started, and she takes off again. And she's running, and we see the waves. She runs past camera and leaps over the first set of waves as they crash down.
We have to go back to 2010. Long before Klaus was nominated for an Academy Award, to when director Sergio Pablos came up with the idea. Because his story was about the origin of Santa Claus, it appealed to nostalgia. And he thought a nostalgic 2D animation style, like we saw in the 90s Disney films, would be a better fit for the story. But he also wanted to advance the look, so his team at SPA Studios in Madrid added a few new crucial steps to the animation process.
I never looked at 3D as an evolution of 2D. I looked at it as a split, like there's a new way of making animation now.
First, they storyboarded the script and made a cut using temporary voices for the characters. They swapped these out later once the real cast was recorded. The next step was layout, where the team designed backgrounds and figured out the placement of the cameras. Animating the characters and coloring the backgrounds happened simultaneously. The end goal was to have both blend together seamlessly and look like they're part of the same world. The characters were all hand-drawn using digital tablets and a program called Harmony by Toon Boom. The animators used live-action reference videos of themselves as a guide. The initial sketches were very rough, as you can see here. But there was a cleanup stage in which artists refined the drawings with crisp, bold lines. Then they painted the characters with basic flat colors. Here, everything still looks very 2D, but they will soon bring the characters to life with a very important addition usually reserved for 3D animation: lighting. His team tested out a new method of lighting 2D characters and released a 2-minute, 30-second long proof of concept teaser back in 2015. The proof of concept looked good and secured them a deal with Netflix, but the process was too labor-intensive. So they partnered with a French company called Les Films de Poisson Rouge to help advance the technology, which they called CLAS, short for Klaus Light and Shadow. Poisson Rouge was able to make the tool much more efficient and easier for the artists to work with. The CLAS tool allowed the artists to paint with light, using a number of different types of lighting in various combinations, like key light and ambient light. With 3D CGI, light is added automatically to objects, but it's trickier with 2D.
But with lines, with drawings, the computer needs a certain level of AI to even understand that this line corresponds to this line, and this hand is also this hand.
The software tracks movement of the characters so the light and shadows will move with it. The program takes a very educated guess, but it's not 100% accurate, so the artists can go in and fine-tune it by hand. Painting with light allowed the artists to get creative, with details down to the tiniest reflections in their eyes, as you can see here. The team used lighting not only to make the characters feel more real, but also to help tell the story. For example, when Jesper is handing out papers to the kids like a drug dealer, he's always standing in the dark to illustrate his shady behavior. And when he's exposed at the end of the film by his father, he's the only one standing in the light, while the others are in the dark. Inspiration for detailed lighting techniques came from movies and TV shows, like using just a sliver of light to illuminate a character similar to this scene in Apocalypse Now. And this scene, when Jesper confronts the bully, was inspired by Breaking Bad. It's important that the backgrounds also look three-dimensional and follow the same lighting pattern as the characters, so they used color keys as a guide.
They're quick doodles, they don't have a lot of detail, but they tell you exactly what the light direction is and how it's going to affect both characters and backgrounds.
For example, this color key shows how Jesper and Alva will be backlit by the sun coming through the window. And this one shows a progression of how the light will change on Alva as she steps towards Jesper. To make the backgrounds pop and appear 3D like the characters, the animators used several different techniques, such as multiplanes, where you have layers on top of layers to give the illusion of depth. The team created a total of 3,160 scenic layouts for the movie. After they'd merged the characters with the backgrounds, they used a second major step that really gave the 3D characters that intricate detail to bring them to life: texture. With another tracking tool, they used contour, lighting, and motion to add various effects to specific parts of a character.
So now you could say, well, I don't want a lot of roughness on the skin, but I want the coat to feel rougher.
For example, they can make them look like an oil painting or a watercolor. These textures are subtle, but if you look closely, you can notice the difference. In the end, the characters looked much more 3D and like a part of their environment, as opposed to looking like stickers on top of an elaborate painting.
And that's what throws people off when they say, this is 3D, because it's a volume and it's moving and it has texture. But it's really a combination of the light and the texture that makes that illusion.
The final stage is final composition, in which any last-minute details are added to the image, like particles. While the majority of the film followed the 2D process, the animators did use 3D models for some characters and objects, and combined the two seamlessly. And even though these were created using CGI, they were lit the same way as the 2D characters were, by hand.
There's things that benefit from being drawn because they feel more organic, and there's, things that are not supposed to look organic. There's things that are supposed to look solid, like wagons and doors and props. And it's really hard to make them feel consistent and solid through drawing.
If you look closely, Jesper's wagon is 3D, and so are some of the reindeer.
Whenever the reindeers had to do something that was particularly challenging for 3D to look right with the 2D, we just animate the reindeers in 2D, and sometimes we would animate one reindeer in 2D and the rest in the ones in the shot in 3D.
Scenes like this chase scene at the end of the film so seamlessly combine 2D and 3D elements that it can be difficult to tell which is which.
There was a shot where Jesper lifts a plate cover at one point, and I commented on how good the integration of the 3D plate cover looked
and treat it like it's a character. And not just the whole city of New York, but the boroughs itself. We treated like different characters. Manhattan was this exaggeration of scale and light and brightness.
The shot where Miles is leaping off the building.
That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
It has an illustrated feel to it, and it starts with these models that, on their own, kind of look broken. All the buildings are portions that don't make sense for New York, and they're skewed in a way that...
Buildings were miles long.
we had buildings that were maybe 8 to 10 times taller than they should be for New York in shots. They're also weirdly composed so that when you see it from the shot camera, it all looks really, it looks really cool. If you pull from the side and you view it through a witness camera, you can see that not only are the buildings very strange proportions, but the layout is really messed up. It's really weird, broken looking. But from the camera, it's an amazingly powerful shot.
そこのあれが話数ですごい大事だったんですね。で、あれをちゃんとしたテッキョンの動きとかテコンドーのアクションとかそれをすごい表現したかったんですね。で、それもすごいやりたかった理由で一つで大きい一つの理由でありますね。
Definitely, director wanted to stay as faithful as possible without really violating his thing. But at the same time, author was like, "Well, no, go push it, dude." So it's a little rare because I would say like 8-2 or 9-1. The original authors are pretty protective of what's on the page, but.
Father always said that you were the more artistic one.
Have you forgotten you're my twin brother? The Creator dealt us the same hand of cards. I just played mine better. You missed the funeral.
I've only come for the part that matters.
I will not share the crown.
You will never wear it!
I've dedicated my life to governing, and the kingdom is on the precipice of starvation. The throne must be mine, or millions will die.
Have you forgotten you're my twin brother? We were born at the same time. My claim to the throne is just as valid as yours.
Well, I'm sorry you traveled all this way for nothing, brother. I control the city garrison. I'll have you exiled.
Let us not forget the power to settle.
最後の日が近いって感じですね。これは人間の方が自信がなくなってくるから。